is up, everybody? I hope you're all doing well. Today we are checking out the Silktone Fuzz. Now, if you're not familiar with Silktone, I personally was familiar with Silktone because I always thought Silktone amps. Now, they're a small brand out of Sacramento, and they build everything one at a time. Everything is very lovingly built. These aren't mass-produced products. I've known them for their amps, but they also do a fuzz pedal, and that's what we're checking out today. This one is based on the same kind of topology as like a fuzz face, but there's a lot of really great features. The crux of it is 2 germanium transistors, which is awesome. Germanium, in my humble opinion, is the way to go, especially when it comes to a fuzz circuit. But the problem with germanium transistors is, you know, you can get them totally dialed in, like you'll sit and dial in your tone forever on a hot stage or in a room that's climate controlled or whatever, and then something changes, the temperature changes, and all of a sudden your fuzz pedal doesn't sound nearly as cool as the day before or even hours before. That's always been problematic, and it's something that's being or has been addressed with this pedal, and that's with this this bias setting, which is really cool. It just allows you, and it also has a digital display to actually show you the number that you've arrived at, but you can always find like that really cool sweet spot where it just feels great, and that's going to vary from stage to stage, from honestly climate to climate. If it's cooler or warmer, the pedal is going to sound different. This allows you to dial that in. So I think that's a really cool feature. There's another feature on here that's called Classic and Raw. We'll get into how it sounds in the demo, but in the classic setting, that's going to be more of like, I guess, your fuzz face or maybe tone bender style circuit. In the raw setting, you're going to get quite a bit more low end, and it just sounds ridiculously fat. So the bias control in the raw and classic switch is a really, really nice feature. You also have what's called a cleanup control. Now, when I first saw that, I thought, well, is that just blending like the clean into the fuzz? It's not. It's actually reducing the input at the front of the box in the same way that you would turn down your volume control. But in this case, it allows you to actually preset it. And we'll get into that when I demo the pedal, but that's a really nice feature to be able to just have your guitar wide open, but when you turn on the box, it's like you backed your guitar off and off to the races with no messing around with your guitar control. So we'll get into that. Obviously, your fuzz control, does what you think it does. And honestly, it does sound best when it's all the way up, but I'll show you in the demo that when you back that off and then, boost the volume of the pedal, you can get a lot of actual just more kind of overdrive sounds. So we'll check that out. And of course, your volume allows you to go from unity to pushing the amp quite a bit more. So to just kind of summarize what's on the pedal, you have your volume control, you have a fuzz control, you have your cleanup control, which I just explained. You have your bias setting. We'll get into how that sounds in the demo. Next to that is the classic and raw switch. We'll get into how that sounds. And of course, there's a display there. And then last but not least, you do have your on-off switch. Oh, one thing I do need to mention is it has, when I read that it had like a onboard pickup simulator, at first I was kind of like, what does that mean? But I'm pretty sure it's based on impedance. A lot of fuzz pedals can be, they can get a little bit persnickety depending on where they are in the chain. I'm assuming, and I could be wrong, but I'm assuming that that allows you to place this pedal anywhere in your signal chain and have it actually be okay. So that's another really nice feature that I forgot to mention, but I just did mention. So there's that. Okay. Yeah, let's get into how this thing sounds. It's the Silktone Fuzz. All right, let's get into some sounds. Here's just the amp with the guitar, or the guitar with the amp. It'll break up ever so slightly if I really dig in. We're going to have the Silktone do all the work. So here we go. Okay, so just bouncing around with some sounds. I went from the raw setting to the classic setting, kind of messed with this bias control, the cleanup control, fuzz, volume. Let's just let's listen to it in the classic mode, which is going to be more like a traditional fuzz face. So a little bit less low end. And definitely cuts through. If you listen to that solo I did, especially the very last solo, I literally just switched from raw to classic using the same guitar. So you can kind of hear how that works. If you want it to sound really fat, then you use the raw setting. If you want it to sound more kind of classic fuzz face and cut through a little bit more, then the classic is the way to go. So we'll just start with the fuzz setting, right? So we can turn that down. I mean, I do like it all the way up and then just adjust accordingly. But if you turn it down and then push the overall volume, you kind of get into some cool, more kind of overdrive feels. But at the same time, like I just did, you could roll the volume off on the guitar and achieve kind of the same thing by just leaving that fuzz all the way up. So that's what's going on there. Same applies in the raw mode. I'm going to stay in the classic mode for now so we can check out the cleanup. It's exactly, you know, at first when I saw it, I was like, well, is this bringing in maybe like a more dry or something? But really what it's doing is just turning down the input into the box. So it's kind of similar to rolling off the volume of the guitar. Nice thing about this cleanup control is if you want to leave your guitar wide open and have a preset thing, so when you turn this on, it's the equivalent of you quickly rolling off your guitar. That's where that would come into play. So check it out. And then you can adjust accordingly with the volume. We're just above unity. We can push a little bit harder now. So you can hear I just rolled the volume off of the guitar to basically do the same thing this cleanup is doing. But as I said, that's a cool feature because you can preset that and be off to the races. So in the classic mode, before I switch to raw, let's listen to what that bias control is doing. And oh, by the way, this noise is not because of the Silktone. It's just, this is a new room and I'm still kind of sorting out what's going on. There's a lot of construction going on around this because I'm in a new build, but I can turn out of it. But it's not the Silktone, it's just typical RF interference or electromagnetic field. Didn't stop Jimmy, never stopped Stevie. There you go. Okay, I digress. Bias control. So you can obviously go from where it's like cutting out like gated and spitty to finding a sweet spot. Which for me is about right there. We can keep rolling it to the right. This is really cool because essentially you have control over what those germanium diodes are doing based on, you know, it could be cold that day, it could be crazy hot that day. You can dial that to kind of sort out how the pedal feels and sounds to be more consistent. It just gives you control, and it's nice to have you know, a digital readout kind of showing you where you landed. You know, just for reference as you're tweaking things in. It's a very cool idea. Yeah, I'm impressed with that. Okay, so that's how that works. Fuzz, cleanup. We know what the volume does. Let's go to the raw setting. The raw setting is going to have quite a bit more low end. It's going to be fatter. Instantly way more low end, and I really dig it. I do. Like when I'm just sitting and playing. Like especially for like an overdrive sound in that raw setting, back the fuzz off a little bit, use the cleanup. Just sounds really big. So it's once again, it's nice to just kind of go back and forth between the two settings. You're not doing anything to the germanium circuit itself. Essentially, there's just going to be more low end. It's going to be fatter in the raw setting. If you want more of a classic kind of fuzz face thing, then you would use the classic mode. So you know, in my case, classic, honestly, to take solos is probably better within the settings of a mix. but when I just want to sit and play, the raw setting is really nice. And that's what I actually used for the rhythm tracks. Okay, cool. So that is the Silktone Fuzz. If you've got any other questions about it, definitely check out the website. And as always, I really appreciate you guys watching, and we will see you next time.